Hi, I'm Shawna.
And I'm Liz.
Welcome to Getting Bookish, a weekly podcast where we will talk about different book-related topics, let you know what we're reading, and even answer Q&As from you.
Be sure to visit our website, gettingbookish.com, and check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Getting Bookish. If you enjoy our podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe and leave us a rating and review, which helps us to be seen by other book lovers.
With all that said, we hope you'll enjoy Getting Bookish with us.
Enjoy the podcast. Hi, everyone. We went a little long on our conversation last week, so we decided to break it up into two parts. So you're actually jumping in on part 2 right now of our Bookish Confessions. If you missed last week, we recommend that you head back to our podcast and click on part 1 of our Bookish Confessions, and you'll be able to listen to the first part of our chat and then jump over here and listen to the end of our conversation. With that being said, we hope you have fun listening to our Bookish Confessions.
Well, speaking of confessions, I actually didn't even write this down as a confession,
Ooh.
but I used to do a lot of crafting with books. So I would turn the book pages into things, like I would turn a book into like a bouquet of flowers, like doing origami
with the
pages of the book. So I ripped the pages out.
Oh. Did you hear that, guys? She rips pages out of books, and I'm the monster?
So it was so funny the very first time I went to a craft show with those things. Like, these ladies would come up and they're like talking to each other, and you can tell that they are just aghast because there's like these origami flowers there and they're made out of book pages. And so I would always have to be like, wait. I work at the library. Books get damaged. People donate books that are damaged. These are books that are going into the trash can. And I rescue them. These are rescued books.
Rescued pages.
They're rescued. But people, like, they get really offended.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's fine. They were in the trash can. I took them out of the trash can and I turned them into this thing. But it's very interesting. People are very passionate about how you take care of a book, even if the book doesn't belong to them.
That is so
even
funny.
If it was a book that they would have thrown away. It does not matter.
You know, now, since you mentioned ripping books,
right.
I remember a long time ago, I was really young, maybe 8, I don't remember, and I was at my aunt's house, and for some reason, she would get books with the covers torn off for some particular reason. So they couldn't be resold, I think.
Sometimes you can get them at bookstores. If a bookstore, if it has, in the front cover, if it has a triangle with an S inside of it, that used to be, or it might still be, that's a strippable book. And so you just tear the cover off and you send all the covers back to the publisher, and the publisher refunds your money.
Oh.
You're supposed to destroy them. But when I used to work at a different bookstore a long time ago, we would get to take like one a month home or something.
Oh, okay.
So,
well, I never knew why. I knew it was probably for some reason, like that you couldn't resell it or things like that. But a bookish confession, I cannot read a book where the cover is stripped off of it. I don't know why. I can't do it. Even if it was a book that I had, if somebody gave me a free book of The Great Alone, which is what I want to read next from Kristen Hanna, they said, here's your free book, but the cover's ripped off. I'd say, all right, thanks. I'm going to go get it from the library, or I'm going to buy it. I don't know why I can't read it when the cover's gone. It's so weird.
You think it would be even easier for you to like fold the pages. But I can see, like, and I think actually a lot of people, so this isn't really a confession, because I think a lot of people would agree with me. I will not buy a book that has the movie poster as the cover.
No. Oh, I totally agree. Absolutely
I'm
agree.
Like, what is that? I was really appreciative when I went and I bought Good Omens. It still has the original cover, and there's just like a little like quote on it that says, "Coming soon to television." And they didn't add like the TV show poster to the front of the book. I was like, thank you for not doing that, because you ruin it that way.
Right. I never will pick a book with the movie poster. That's so funny.
No,
I
don't.
Totally agree.
Yeah. Even if it's good, like, even if it was, and they didn't do this with Harry Potter, but even if it was Harry Potter, and I love the books and I love the movies, but I do not want the movie cover poster on the cover.
I feel like there needs to be a separation of book and movie.
Yes.
You know how they say separation of church
Just like
and state?
church and state.
Book and movie do not need to go hand in hand.
No, like, we know they're related, but they're cousins. They're not twins.
Exactly. It's not the same. It's not the same.
Yeah.
And what about libraries? So you were, okay, here I have this question. You were a librarian, and I know a lot of people must turn books in late. Did you have late fees, or were you one of the libraries that don't have late fees? Because I've heard of these. Oh no, she's hiding herself behind a book. There are libraries that don't charge late fees. Did you know this?
Yes, I actually love the idea of not charging late fees. At our library, when I worked there, I want to say that our late fee collection was about 1% of the money that the library spent over the course of the year. So I feel, now I'm maybe in a minority and I had no say when I worked at our library, but I was just like, it's 1%. Can't we do without that 1%? And part of it is, will people feel the need to return their books on time if there isn't? But it's only 10 cents if you're going to keep the book. Well, at our library, it was only 10 cents a day.
10 cents
per book.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Ours is a quarter.
Which really adds up if you're checking out a bunch of books for like all your kids.
Yes.
That adds up really fast. We have some other libraries in the state. I'm in Colorado, and so there's some other libraries in the state that at least children's books don't get overdue fines, which I love that idea.
Yes.
Because kids aren't driving themselves to the library to return their 10 Dr. Seuss books that they checked out. Like, they're not doing that. And so we did charge fines, but staff didn't get fines.
Okay.
And I don't think in 6 years of working there, I ever returned a book on time.
Liz.
I know. It's awful. I was there every single day.
That's so funny.
And I never could get my books returned on time. Sometimes they would be in my office. They'd be sitting on my desk. And I couldn't get them returned. I have zero excuses, but that was actually something I had written down as one of my confessions, was that I was terrible at returning my books.
That's funny.
It was awful.
I'm really bad. In fact, I hope Wes isn't listening to this podcast. Wes is my husband, for those who don't know.
Uh-oh.
But I have a library card for myself. I have one for each of my children. So 5 altogether. And every library card, you can check out 25 books.
Okay.
I check out the max for every single card, which, if you do the math, is 125 books.
Well.
And obviously most of those are picture books for them because we go through them so much and they like to hear them over, and we just go through all of these picture books. Like, we don't always have 125 books, but most of them are usually maxed out. And I think when I went to the library this last time, I paid $20 on one card, $18 on another. And then she even said, I feel really bad for you. So we're doing this food drive where if you bring in cans of food, that's going to take off one of your fines per can. And I thought, wow, I have a bunch of canned food that, you know how you always have those, like a can of succotash that you're never going to eat. And like, why did you buy this? So I'm like, I can get those together and take off some of these things. She said, you just have to bring them in by this date. And me being also a heavy procrastinator, I never did.
Same.
So I have all of these fees that probably total almost $100. And I'm just like, so I'm paying them off little and little as I go. But now I'm down to only being able to use Ivy's card because you can't check out books if you have a fine on one of the cards. So embarrassing. I'm sorry, my bookish friends.
Oh, I don't think you should be embarrassed though, because I bet you are in fantastic company. Because so when I worked at the library, I didn't get fines, but well, I had a library card that I not only did not get fines, but I could check out 100 books.
Oh man, I don't know if that's a curse or a blessing.
It was so terrible because then when I'd be like, okay, I need to bring some of these library books back, how do you bring 100 books back to the library?
I literally bring a wagon.
Yeah, there's just so many.
I'm that lady.
But it's crazy how fast the fines add up. And
yes.
I would always try to remind myself, and when I was talking to other patrons, they would say the same thing. Well, I got to check out 25 books and I have like this much of a fee, which is less than what a single one of those books would have cost if I had just bought it outright.
Right.
So they're little reminders, but sometimes those fees are so painful. And I was definitely not circulation. That's the area of the library that does all the checking in and checking out of books. I was oftentimes on their bad list because they'd be like, you have 6 books that are overdue and they all have holds on them. Can you please bring them back? Like, yes, I will get them at lunch.
And that's another thing too, kind of a confession, a library confession, is I go down my TBR list and I go into the library website and I just put on hold like the max amount that I can. They tell me that they're all in. I pick them up. And sometimes I never read a single one of them. But I'll keep them for the max amount of time. Like I'll keep renewing them. So I've had them for like 6 weeks, not 6 weeks. How long do I get? Like 3 or 4 months sometimes. And I haven't gone through them. I'm like, why do I do this? But I just like being surrounded by the books I want to read, I guess.
I agree with you. And I panic over the idea that I might not have a book to read.
Even though you're surrounded.
I know. I have 8 bookshelves in my house that are packed full. But at the same time, I just think, well, what if I run out of books? And I mean, I've been in positions in my life where I'm very lucky because when I worked at the library, I had a key. So I could, if it was, Saturday and the library wasn't open, I could go down there and still get myself a book if such a crazy thing happened as I ran out of something to read, which I probably didn't. There was probably just something specific on my list. But there's like that panic where you're like, I don't know what I'm going to read next.
Right. Absolutely.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
Are there any books that you have read that you don't always, that you're, I don't want to say proud of, because again, I love our podcast because if you're reading, that's just what makes us happy. But for you personally, are there any books that you kind of just keep to yourself that you've read? That you're not embarrassed, but it's just like, I don't know. Because I have a list of my own.
Do you? I love that you have a list of those. There are definitely some books that I read that I'm like, I don't know if I would tell people about this. I think prior to blogging about my books, I just wouldn't tell people. Like, I never told people that I loved YA. And I've loved YA books for a really long time. And I just never told anyone that I loved those books because there's an opinion about that. And it's not a very positive one from some people. And so I think I would keep that to myself. But I think once I started blogging about books, I was just a lot more open. Like, this is what I'm reading. This is what I'm enjoying. If you're here and reading my blog, you either find me interesting or you read the same kinds of things
Right.
as I do. And like, there are some real cheesy YA kind of fantasy / romance books that I've read. I'm trying to think, like Jennifer Armentrout, I think is how you say her last name. She writes, and I love them. But they're not great literature. They're not going to win an award or anything, but they're fun. Yeah. So they are those guilty pleasure reads.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is.
I don't like identifying them as that because I don't really feel guilty about reading them. But
yeah, I have a couple. One of them is, and I've mentioned Jude Deveraux before because of my past favorite legend. But now I don't like books like Harlequin romance where you have the people on the cover that are like half naked. And there's a huge market of people that love those books.
Exactly.
I'm not one of them. I don't like a lot of those heavy scenes in my books. But there is a book, again, that Jude Deveraux wrote that is pretty heated, and I really liked it. And it was called The Black Lion. Have you heard of that?
Black Lion. I haven't. No.
I have a copy of it, like, hidden somewhere in my, like, books that I don't showcase everywhere. And the story, if you took out those kind of scenes, which I read it when I was younger, so I probably thought it was a lot more risque than it really is.
Very
but
possibly.
If you took those out, I just really liked the story. But I thought I was like, you know, when I was reading it, I'm like, I can't let people see that I'm reading this. You know, what are they going to think of me? That, and when I think of a lot of books that I read when I was younger, you know, you were reading Anne of Green Gables and Little House on the Prairie and these wonderful, just beautiful, classic, pure books. And I was reading V.C. Andrews, Flowers in the Attic, and R.L. Stine, and Christopher Pike. And these are creepy stories. These are very odd stories that I'm probably not going to keep in my own children's reach, you know, because I don't know. I would read some of these books. I think I've probably read like 30 V.C. Andrews books. I mean, it was just like back to back to back. And they all have like the same kind of premise. These children are just in horrible situations, you know, and nothing good is happening. I mean, it's so sad. Like, where's the joy in that? So, and then Christopher Pike, like, people would just die mysteriously. And I'm like, why did I read these books? And so that's kind of a confession, because if you see what I read now, you wouldn't think that that's what I read when I was younger. Now, obviously, I read all the Pippi Longstockings. I read Judy Blume, Ramona Quimby books. I loved all of those. But in some weird change of pace, I switched over to the dark side of children. Well, not really children's, but I guess, like, would that be young adult?
Like middle grade.
Middle grade, yeah.
Yeah, I think probably middle grade. And I think that a lot of times when you're a kid, you're reading what's available or what's being handed to you. So if you walk into your library and you're like, oh, what's really popular? Like, I want a good book to read. Mm-hmm. They're going to recommend what's popular. Like, when kids would come in to my library and they'd be like, I want a good book to read. I'm like, well, have you read Diary of a Wimpy Kid? Because odds are they were going to enjoy it. So if you had walked in and that you were like, I want a good book to read, well, at that time, Goosebumps was everywhere. And so,
now, I never read any of the Goosebumps. I read R.L. Stine pre-Goosebumps.
Oh, right. Yeah. So,
like,
I'm trying to even
no, I don't even remember. But yeah, I don't know. So that's another confession there. Moving on.
There's another confession. All right, so I have a confession. I have ruined books more than once by spilling on them.
Spilling like your drink or something?
Yeah, like coffee, usually.
Oh, that is so funny. I dropped a peanut butter sandwich on Tattooist of Auschwitz. And the oil from the peanut butter, of course it landed butter side down. And
well, yeah,
the oil went through the page. So when I gave it to my mom, I'm like, when you get to chapter like 9 or whatever it is, and it looks a little weird, it's just old peanut butter.
just ignore it. It's fine. It's not gonna hurt you. I think that it happens, right? Because
they're always with you.
Yeah, like I'm reading while I'm eating lunch, or I'm reading while I'm having breakfast, and usually what's happening is I'm reading and I have like my mug. So I have my book and I have my mug, and for some reason all science and how gravity works escapes me, and I'm like, I can rest my mug on the corner of my book and it will be fine. And it is not fine. No. It does not work that way. So yeah, it's a funny thing.
It is. And I'm annoyed when it's a book that I bought, but I feel horrible if, again, it's a borrowed book. And I'm trying to wipe it, without smearing the ink. Yeah.
When I worked at the library, there were some interesting links that people went to try to save a book after something catastrophic happened. And it's like, you can always just pay to replace it.
Right.
Which is potentially easier than putting a paper towel between every single page of a book. I got a book returned one time like that. She had spilled something. And so she had so carefully put a paper towel between every single page and rubber banded real tight the whole thing together. And she was like, I think if you let it completely dry out, it'll be okay. And I'm like, you have 2 rolls of paper towels in this.
And you have to pull
you're
it
already
out.
halfway to buying a new book.
It's funny. This again. Now the confessions are just pouring out. This is going to be our longest episode. It's so funny that you mentioned that, because I did a lot of reading while I was floating in our pool. I would just read book after book, and one time I dropped my book in the pool. Of course. So I laid it out. My mom said, just lay it out. The sun will dry. It'll be fine. And so I did. And then, of course, the book, instead of going like this as a paperback, it's now fanned out 5 inches.
And they're all wavy.
But I loved it so much. I think it was a texture thing, because when I turned the page, it made a really cool crinkly sound. And I loved the fatness that it made the book be. So I was reading the next book and I was like, I'm going to drop it in the pool on purpose.
I love it.
And so I did. And I was like, okay, I got to stop dropping the books in the pool. But I loved how they looked all like wide and fat and crinkly looking. I totally forgot about that. You were making your own
book art.
I totally forgot about that until we're just talking about all of this. Oh my goodness.
Okay, so I have another question.
Okay.
About confessions. What is the weirdest thing you've ever used as a bookmark?
Besides my peanut butter sandwich, apparently.
On purpose. What's the weirdest thing you've ever used on purpose?
On purpose. Oh, a diaper.
Oh, I love it.
It was unused.
Like a new clean one? Yeah.
Right. I had a book in my diaper bag and I was reading it, and I usually, if I can't find anything, I'll use a receipt or something, and I had nothing to mark the page with, and I didn't want to turn a corner because it wasn't my book. So I thought, well, I have a diaper. I'll just shove that in there.
There you go.
What about you?
Now I'm really nerdy about using bookmarks. I love bookmarks. I want to use a bookmark. I usually prepare to this book. I took the cover off of it and I put a bookmark in it because that's normally how I prepare. But I have used anything within arm's reach. I have used chapstick as a bookmark. I have used a pen as a bookmark.
Absolutely.
I will use anything. One time I used a check. Someone had written me a check and I hadn't deposited it yet. And I used it as a bookmark, and then I accidentally returned the book to the library. So then I had to call the library and be like, there's a check inside that book. Can I have it But when I worked at the library, we got a lot of interesting things
Oh,
used
I
as
didn't even
bookmarks.
think about people leaving their
Some
stuff.
things were gross. Sometimes library books are gross. My friends, if something weird happens to a book while you have it, just call the library and say you need to replace it. Don't return it. Like, there were some very unusual things. But one time I found a puzzle piece.
Oh, no.
And I was like, this is a bummer for whoever
Oh, my goodness.
wants to do this puzzle. So there was a puzzle piece, which I think was really interesting. Sometimes, like, we'd find an ID, like someone's driver's license.
I'm sure I've used an ID or a credit card in a book at some point. Or my phone.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
I put my phone in there a bunch.
Right.
And then I'm like, I
You're
can't find my
probably
phone.
less likely. My phone is gone. That's okay. I'll just sit down and read. Oh, look, here's my phone. We've definitely found cash.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people would use like $1 or something. But it was always just really funny. Or pictures. Like, someone would use like a picture of their child, which I guess maybe they got a whole bunch of like copies made and they use them as bookmarks. I don't know. But it was always kind of funny, like, to open a book and be like, oh, here's someone else's bookmark. I guess they didn't finish the book.
Yeah, I've used some random things, lots of receipts. I've used old string, like when I'm doing my sewing pictures, I'll have my my pile of cut string next to me, and then I'll read. I'll say, oh, I need a bookmark. Oh, there's some old string. Throw that in
and
there.
it can be the smallest thing, as long as it's going to stay inside. Like, it could be this. Like, this would stay inside of a book and keep my page. I mean, it could just be about anything.
Anything.
So,
wow,
do you have any more confessions for us?
You know what? Honestly, we could probably do we might need to do another episode later on about some more confessions, because that was really fun.
It was really fun. I think that we should have people submit confessions.
I would love that. And
Maybe
then
some
we could read them.
anonymous submitting.
Yes, and we could read them out loud on a podcast.
Let's do that. So go find on Facebook. I'll set it up so you guys can do it anonymously.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know whose confessions are whose. And let us know your bookish confessions.
Yes, we would love to know those and then read them for you guys. I think that would be really interesting, and see if there's anything that we also have done.
Yeah, I think that we're probably all in pretty good company when it comes to some of our confessions over here.
All right, guys. Well, you have a wonderful week. And again, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed hanging out with us. Don't forget to check us out on social media and subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on any of the fun. See you next week.